there's flagrant twos in basketball in the WNBA. This is a totally fine reaction, I think, to a play like that. And maybe the story ends there if Carrington doesn't go to the locker room, pick up her phone, and tweet white privilege, which is insane, an absolutely insane thing to say.
You hit her in the head, you drew blood, you didn't connect with the ball at all whatsoever. So to me, it was just very ignorant and to some degree asinine by DiJonai Carrington to suggest that that call was based on white privilege.
So here's how Carrington responded to that. She said, "I've never once claimed that the assessment of the foul was white privilege. That was your assumption. I'm the last thing from ignorant or asinine when it comes to speaking on white privilege. I would never use that term as a rhetorical weapon, knowing the historical and social weight it holds without having the proper evidence to substantiate it."
A flagrant 2 foul is a story that lasts about 90 seconds, and this one was finished before the first quarter ended. What kept it alive was a phone. DiJonai Carrington walked off the floor at the United Center, went into the locker room while the game was still being played, and posted 2 words that turned an ordinary basketball call into the loudest argument in American sport. Dave Portnoy called it an absolutely insane thing to say, and within 72 hours, almost nobody with a microphone was willing to defend it. This is how those 2 words got away from her, and the number that finishes the story is $1,000. The game was on national television on the 8th of August, and Indiana had lost 2 in a row coming into it. Chicago arrived at 12 wins and 22 losses, sitting 12th in a 15-team league with a season already wrecked by injuries and nothing left to play for except pride in the cameras. Sophie Cunningham was the most discussed player in the sport at that moment, and almost none of that discussion was about basketball. Supporters of her position on transgender athletes in women's sport had gathered outside a Fever Road game for the 4th time that summer, and the 4th one was outside the United Center that night. Carrington was working her way back from a foot injury and had only made her season debut on the 30th of July, so the temperature in that building was set long before anybody was fouled. Both benches understood that whatever happened over the next 2 hours was going to be replayed for a week, and one of them was about to hand the cameras something better than they came for. With 1 minute and 59 seconds left in the first quarter, Cunningham broke away for an uncontested layup, and Carrington came in behind her. The contact landed on the head and the neck while Cunningham was still in the air, and Cunningham came down hard onto the floor. She was back on her feet almost immediately and walking straight at Carrington, and teammates had to pull her away after she shoved her. The officials went to the monitor and found a wind-up, an impact, and a follow-through, which is the exact language the rulebook uses for the upgrade. They made it a flagrant 2 and ejected Carrington. Indiana won the game 90-86. Everything to that point was ordinary. Hard fouls happen, ejections happen, and the review process did precisely what it exists to do. What came next had no process attached to it at all. Minutes after leaving the floor, with the game still being played behind her, Carrington opened threads and posted 2 words in capital letters: white privilege. She tagged the Indiana Fever. There was no sentence around it, no explanation attached to it, and nothing else from her that night. Her own head coach, Tyler Marsh, was asked about the post in the press conference afterwards and said he was only just hearing about it. Cunningham was asked whether race had anything to do with the ejection and said flatly that it did not, pointing out that she had been thrown out for the same kind of play the previous season and had deserved it. She also said she had never spoken to Carrington, did not know her, and that Carrington had not even been on the roster the year the 2 teams built their history. That is the state of the story on Saturday night, and it was already bigger than the basketball. Portnoy got to it on the Monday morning, and the first thing he did was concede the foul call completely. I don't think anybody with 2 eyeballs thinks it's not. Is Portnoy giving away the only ground that was ever worth arguing over?
Commits the flagrant 2 on Sophie Cunningham. Clearly a flagrant 2, by the way. I don't think there's anybody with 2 eyeballs who thinks it's not. Goes for a block that then carries over and clothesline. See you later, hit the showers.
He is not disputing the ejection. He is not asking for the call to be looked at again. And he is not building a case that she was hard done by. He is saying the basketball part of this was settled in 90 seconds by 3 officials and a monitor, and then he moves to the part that was not settled by anybody. An absolutely insane thing to say is an unusually heavy sentence from a man who has spent this entire season carrying water for this league's biggest audience, and he has not walked a word of it back since.
And maybe the story ends there if Carrington doesn't go to the locker room, pick up her phone, and tweet white privilege, which is insane, an absolutely insane thing to say.
He went on to say that the story was never the ejection at all, and that the people covering it were leaving out the only part that mattered. He also called Carrington one of the dirtiest players in the league, which is a separate argument and a far less interesting one than the one he had already won. The verdict he reached that morning turned out to be the accurate read of the entire week. Nobody has seriously argued the Flagrant 2 since the night it happened. Every day of coverage after that was about 18 characters typed on a phone, and the man who forced Carrington to defend them had already gone on air the night before. Emmanuel Acho built his case on the tape rather than on the temperature.
You hit her in the head, you drew blood, you didn't connect with the ball at all whatsoever. So to me, it was just very ignorant and to some degree asinine by DiJonai Carrington to suggest that that call was based on white privilege.
You drew blood is a fact rather than an opinion, and it is the detail that stops this being a judgment call about how hard is too hard. Acho's argument was that calling the ejection a matter of white privilege both ignores the rulebook and cheapens the term for everybody who needs it to mean something. He called her framing very ignorant and to some degree asinine, and he said it on his own show with his own name on it. Carrington did not let that sit, and her reply is the reason this ran for another 4 days.
She said, I've never once claimed that the assessment of the foul was white privilege. That was your assumption. I'm the last thing from ignorant or asinine when it comes to speaking on white privilege. I would never use that term as a rhetorical weapon, knowing the historical and social weight it holds without having the proper evidence to substantiate it.
That was your assumption is the entire defense, and it asks a great deal of everybody who watched the sequence happen in real time. She is saying that the post and the ejection were unrelated events that happened to land about 4 minutes apart. She cited her Stanford education in the same exchange, which turned out to be the part that traveled furthest and helped her least. Acho's answer was that America is a speaker-oriented country, and the burden of being understood sits with the person doing the speaking, which is a polite way of saying that a phrase that heavy cannot be dropped without a sentence around it. Carrington told reporters in Seattle that the contact was unfortunate and never intentional, and almost nobody had accused her of doing it on purpose in the first place. She answered the charge nobody was making and left the one everybody was. The league had a chance to settle all of it that week, and the way it chose to use that chance is the strangest part of the story. Here's what the whole thing actually cost her. A Flagrant 2 carries 2 flagrant points and a $1,000 fine under the league's rules this season. 2 flagrant points is halfway to the automatic 2-game suspension that arrives at 4, so the contact itself cost her $1,000 and 1 quarter of basketball. The post cost her nothing at all. The league was asked directly whether it treated the post as an allegation of racial bias and whether it was reviewing the matter. Outlets went back a second time and a third time before publishing, and the Chicago Sun-Times reported the same silence from its own attempts. No answer ever came. 2 days after the ejection, Carrington checked into Chicago's next game as normal, with no suspension and no public statement of any kind. She then played the best game of her career in it, coming off the bench in Seattle for a career-high 26 points and going 10 from 10 at the free throw line. 2 nights after that, she picked up her second technical foul of the season against Golden State, worth another $500. That is the gap that makes this story what it is. $1,000 for the contact and nothing whatsoever for the caption, when the caption is the only part anybody has spent a week arguing about. None of it means she cannot play, and the record settles that on its own because she was most improved player and first team all defense in 2024. The argument was never about her ability. Once the league said nothing, the story stopped belonging to basketball and went somewhere the play never did. On Fox News, Tyrus called Carrington a hateful person and a liar, said the foul alone deserved a suspension and the comments deserved another, and said that if he had done the same thing, he would have been fired on the spot.
On top of being a hateful person, she's a liar as well. You know damn right well what that was. She wasn't playing the ball. She took an opportunity to take a shot at someone based on the color of their skin and their belief system, which I thought in America we were against. And it just so happens that she did it against a white person. And for some reason in this country, it has become fashionable to be racist against white people and get a pass. The actions alone should be a suspension. The comments after that should be expulsion. If I was to do that to an athlete and then afterwards say, privilege or something like that, or was rude to you on a network and said the only reason why they kicked me off the network because of white privilege, I'd be fired.
America Reports Fox News August 12, 2026 timestamp to be confirmed. She took an opportunity to take a shot on someone based on the color of their skin and her belief system, which I thought in America we were against. foxnews.com/video/64032297611112. Based on the color of their skin is a far heavier charge than anything Portnoy or Acho put on her, and it is a very serious thing to attach to a basketball play. This is the point where the story left the sport entirely and became several hours of national television, and it happened because the one body with the authority to rule on it chose to say nothing for days. By the end of that week, Portnoy had stopped talking about Carrington altogether and was demanding that Indiana sack its own head coach for defending her, which tells you how far this had drifted from a foul. Here's the part almost nobody involved wants to sit with. Every single person who has looked at the tape agrees the ejection was correct, including Portnoy, including Cunningham, including Carrington's own head coach. There was never a real argument about the call. There was a hard foul, a review, an ejection, and a game that carried on without her, which is exactly how basketball is built to handle this. What basketball has no procedure for is the phone. Carrington had a bad 4 minutes and then made a choice about how to spend them, and that choice is the one she now answers for in every building she walks into. The foul cost $1,000. The post cost her the benefit of the doubt from a very large number of people who had never thought about her before that Saturday. And she has spent every day since telling them they misread 2 words she chose not to explain. Chicago hosts Indiana again on the 23rd of August. Cunningham will be on the floor and so will Carrington, and every camera in that building will be pointed at the 2 of them from the opening tip. That is the outcome nobody in this story claims to have wanted, and it is the one all of them made certain of. If you think Portnoy called this right, hit the like button. If you think the league should have stepped in and ended it, tell us in the comments who you actually hold responsible here. Subscribe to Hoop Central for the receipts, the tape, and the arguments nobody else bothers to finish.